Hey guys, it's Miss Cáceres again today. Welcome back. So as usual, we're going to start out with our heading for today, name, day, grade, and section. Our topic is compare and contrasting arguments. That is also our objective. And our I can statement is I can understand the author's purpose. Now, if you guys need a little more time to jot this down in your notebook, just make sure to pause the video and take as much time as you need. Now, as you guys know, last week and the week before that, we saw first the story, The Automation Paradox, and then we saw Heads Up Humans, which are two argumentative articles talking about two different points of views in reference to one story, which in this case, they're focusing on automation, which is a change in technology or an advancement in technology. Now, since we've seen and read both stories, what we're going to do now is using both stories, we're going to collaborate and compare those two arguments. When you compare arguments, you identify similarities and differences between the writer's claims, the writer's reasons, and the writer's evidence. As you review The Automation Paradox and Heads Up Humans to compare the arguments, read carefully so you can identify each writer's central idea and the facts and interpretations used to support it. Identify where the texts disagree on matters of fact and interpretation. So you guys have to read or go over or scan, if you want to use that term, both stories again before you start writing your compare and contrast arguments. Also, be sure to consider how the two authors use counter-arguments to respond to opposing claims. A counter-argument is an argument made to address an alternative viewpoint or an objection. Good writers anticipate and acknowledge opposing views and objections to their arguments and refute them with counter-arguments. So, in a small group, complete the Venn diagram with similarities and differences between the two arguments. Now, this is not going to be a group effort. This is actually going to be individual work. So you guys are not going to be working in group. You're going to do this by yourselves. Now, if you take a look at your textbook, you're going to notice that the picture for the Venn diagram is extremely small. There's not really a lot of space in there for you guys to be able to write your similarities and your differences for both topics. So what you're going to do is you have two choices. You can use Word document and create your own Venn diagram just by linking two circles together and adding text boxes inside of those circles. Or you can just simply draw it in your textbook on a piece of white paper, whichever you feel more comfortable with. Just make sure that you write the correct heading. So as you can see, here is our Venn diagram. We will be looking for differences for the Automation Paradox, Heads Up Humans, and we're also going to be looking for similarities between them. Now, once you guys are done with that, it's time to analyze those texts. This is going to be based on the information that you put inside your Venn diagram. First, compare what are some points of agreement in both arguments. This is where you're going to look for your similarities. 2, connect. What pieces of evidence in each argument seem to contradict each other? When we say contradict, it means it goes against what in reality they're talking about. Okay, contradict is opposing towards something. Question number 3, identify patterns. What are some similarities and differences between the types of evidence used in each argument? Patterns is when one thing follows the other. Like they're obviously the biggest pattern is the fact that they're both about technology advancement. So that's where you're going to start out, right in the main idea or the central idea. And from there, you should be able to find similarities and differences between those evidence given to you in both arguments. And finally, evaluate which argument is most convincing to you. It means which one do you really believe is better than the other? Which one persuaded you, entertained you, informed you? Remember PI when we talked about that, the types of techniques that authors use? Now, for you to do that, you also have to cite evidence from both texts to support your opinion. For example, if you decide to go for the Automation Paradox, you will cite evidence from it that convinces you that they are right. And then you also have to use Heads Up Humans and say, okay, well, this is the part that was not convincing to me. So you would cite the evidence that you felt was not convincing, and that would support your opinion of choosing one or the other. Okay, now it's time for a debate. Now, this is something we're going to do in class, obviously. Now, in your group, you can continue reflecting on the ideas in these texts and your response to them by debating the impact of automation on employment. So these are the steps you have to follow. One, you have to choose a side. Anytime you're going to do a debate, you have to pick one side or the other. You can't be on both sides, and you cannot be a neutral ground. That means that you can't say, no, I'm not for this team or that team, I'm just in the middle. No, you have to choose a side. Work with a small group, decide which viewpoint you will argue. Will automation have a positive or a negative impact on employment? 2, gather information, review the two arguments, and use relevant text evidence to defend or challenge the writer's claims. Remember when we talked about what relevant means? It actually goes along with what you are talking about. List reasons from the text and from your prior research that support your viewpoint. So here, this is what you guys are going to use for your debate. You got to look up reasons, and you have to have evidence. So really consider filling out a piece of paper or an index card and writing down what your reason is and the evidence that supports that. Remember where you're going to get your evidence from the same argumentative text that you've read in the Automation Paradox and or Heads Up Humans. 3, prepare your counter argument. This is very essential, guys. Anticipate the opposing team's claim, reasons, and evidence. List reasons and evidence you will cite to argue against the opposing team. You have to think about the team's argument, and then you have to have a counter argument for that. 4, conduct the debate. Debate another group of students who have chosen the opposite position. Each group should be allowed to speak for a set moment of time. Use appropriate eye contact, speaking rate, that means don't go too fast or too slow, volume, enunciation, and gestures to communicate your ideas effectively. So this is how you guys are going to prepare for a debate on both topics. First, you have to create that Venn diagram to see the similarities and the differences. Then you answer the following questions. And finally, you will debate by choosing one side, gathering information, preparing your counter argument, and then having the debate. Tends to happen. Well, I hope everyone understood that. That's it for me today. Can't wait to hear your debating skills in class. Bye, guys.